What's up, my humans? What's up, the people of the world? How are you doing? Cool. That's good. Good to talk to you. Welcome to the second episode of Daydreaming with Matty Cardarople. I'm Matty Cardarople. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all having a good week. Uh, so setting up the podcast here, and uh, I couldn't find the cord for the microphone. And then I went around looking for it for a while. And then I realized that it was right in front of me, right next to me the whole time. So this is a common ADD thing that happens. Uh, Also, I don't do it as much, but I'll maybe leave something in the fridge that's not supposed to be there, like a stapler or uh, binder. You know, I know those. I don't know why it's all office supplies, but it it'll happen. I guess that's my filing cabinet. It happens on occasion. Okay, all right. Don't judge. Uh, that's one of the things I have to deal with ADD. I also can't find my keys a lot of the times, but I've gotten better about this. I can find my keys now. Um, but yeah, you know, some other myths about ADD, I guess, is, people with ADD, they're not on time, but I am actually very punctual. I always like to arrive, um, maybe a half hour or 15 minutes before I have an appointment, or sometimes even an hour, because I like being on time. Oh, crap. Just got a text that came in. So we'll turn on. Hey, Siri, do not disturb. Thank you, Siri. See, I forgot to do that. That's an ADD thing, kind of. That might just be a human thing. Um, so yeah, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I'm very punctual. That's one thing that I will say about myself. But when I was younger, I was not punctual. When I was in, middle school, junior high, high school, always late to class, dragging my feet. Uh, I would get detention for being late. Um, I had this vice principal. His name was Mr. Willie. Yes, that was his name, Mr. Willie. And I think he kind of trained me not to be late because I got so many detentions. So I guess now in life, I think like, oh, I better not be late, or Mr. Willie will give me a detention on some certain level. But I just want to say that I am very reliable and I am on time. Uh, Thank you. I just wanted to get that out there. I just wanted you to know that it's important. But anyway, so let's do some potting. Some potting. No, we're not going to be dealing with frogs. We're going to be listening to some audio of me interviewing a very cool, very talented writer producer. Her name is Mary Laws. That's right, Mary Laws. She wrote and created this show and produced this show that I was in called Monsterland. It's on Hulu. Check it out. It's out now. It's streaming. It's an anthology series. It's really great if you love the horror genre and just kind of real life. It's great. I really love it. It's really well done. Um, she also was a writer on Succession, and she wrote a film called The Neon Demon. So check out her work. She's very, very talented. I was lucky enough to get to talk to her. She's super cool. So yeah, let's just kind of dive right into this. Just kind of dive in like a swimmer. All right, put on those goggles because we'll be swimming. No, I'm just kidding. You don't need to wear goggles. Well, you might need to. It is a pandemic out there. But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode. Check us out on Apple Podcast, on YouTube, all that jazz. Subscribe, comment. Thank you so much. Enjoy the interview. So here we go. Let's dive on in. All right, diving in. Here we go. Daydreaming. Daydreaming. Sit back and enjoy the ride. How are you? Great to see you. That background is so good.
Those flowers.
That's nice.
Man, it is flowers. I'm trying to set up. This is Heather.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello. Wait 1 second.
Hey.
I'm here.
Oh, no worries.
Hi. Hey, you were
how's
so
it
good,
going?
man.
Thank you.
You're incredible in the
Oh,
show,
thank
dude.
you.
So good.
Thank
Yeah,
you
no
so
problem.
much. Yeah, the show's incredible. I
I
love
was
it.
telling her what a all-around favorite you are. I watched it with some friends the other day, and they were like, "Wait, we know that guy. We love that guy, man. He's in everything." And I was like,
that's
"Yeah, Maddie's awesome."
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. I had a blast doing it. It was great.
Yeah, I was so glad you were a part of it. I'm trying to make sure my microphone is set up the right way. Heather, do I need to on the audio?
You should be recording. This is a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So I think, the way we do it.
I have this guy.
Oh, nice. I have the same one.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
You want to speak
The Yeti.
into this.
Okay.
And then also.
So I can kind of put it here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Here.
Okay.
And then, do you want her recording separately on GarageBand and then sending you the audio file?
I'm recording now the video. And
okay. And this is all you need?
Yeah. But
okay, perfect.
As a backup, if you want to do that, that's fine.
It's totally up to you, man. Let me just make sure that. Okay, so yeah, it's on. And then I want to use my earbuds.
Sweet. Earbuds.
Heather has a podcast also, and
oh, sweet.
So she always sets me up for these because I'm
awesome.
tech challenged.
That should be it. Try.
Okay, great. Does that sound good to you?
You sound really good. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, honey.
No problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
He says, "Nice meeting you."
Nice meeting you.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm really grateful that some of the press and stuff for the show has been dying down now, which is really nice because I have a little bit more free time and I needed it for my own sanity.
Totally. Yeah. It's repeating the same kind of thing can get taxing, but of course
just being in front of people can get taxing. I don't know how you do what you do. I feel like it's so. Anyway, this is probably stuff you want to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. No, we can start now. We're rolling.
Yeah, great. Let's do it.
We can dive in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does get taxing to be in front of people, but you get used to it and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, my sounds. I'm just making sure my sound's coming through. It is. Okay, great. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much for doing this. You're the best.
You're the best.
No, you are.
No, you are.
So, Mary, I guess tell the listeners or the audience a little bit about yourself and your your background in writing, and are you in LA right now, or are you
Yes,
okay, cool.
I am. Yeah, I live in LA. I've lived here for about, it might be 5 years now. I think 5 years now.
Nice.
One of which I've just spent entirely inside my house. um, yeah, a little bit about me. I mean, I think we're talking because I was the showrunner of the show that you were on, Monsterland, which is on Hulu. All episodes streaming. Give it a listen.
Or a watch.
Or a watch. You could do either.
Either
Give it a
or.
watch. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. How far back do you want to go?
Yeah, I
I
guess
was born a wee babe, May 12th, 1986.
very cool. Um, awesome. Any other events happen in 1986 that you can remember? I'm just kidding.
No, I really have no idea what happened in 1986. I was really busy drinking milk and sleeping.
Nice. Cool. So, did you where'd you go to high school? Were you into writing in high school at all, or
Yeah.
when was your first memory of like, oh, I really enjoy this writing. Writing is fun.
Yeah, I I've always liked writing. So I grew up in Texas, in a town called the Woodlands, which is a master planned community. For those who don't know what that is, it's kind of like the town of Agrestic on Weeds. So if you've ever watched the television show Weeds, it's one of those planned communities where everything looks just exactly the same, and you know, it's kind of a nightmare town. And like prefab houses, prefab, like everything just sort of boxed. And anyway, they had a really great, because it was like sort of a wealthy community, and I was not from a wealthy family, not by any stretch of the imagination, but we somehow lived on kind of the outskirts of this town. I got to go to the really wonderful public school, which probably would be akin to a lot of private schools in some communities because it had great programs, great facilities. But that's like part of the reason I think my parents wanted to move to this place, was because we were going to get really quality education for free, my brother and I growing up. And so I went to the Woodlands High School, and I got into theater. And so I had, that's really like my foray into writing, was through theater. I had always really enjoyed writing and enjoyed reading and enjoyed my English classes. And even when I was a kid, would write short stories and poems and all of those kinds of things. But I think when I discovered theater, I really discovered like a form of storytelling that particularly moved me. And so I just like dived in, and I got I tried to I started as like a performer, because I think that's kind of like when you're in high school, that's the way into things. You're either a performer or you're a techie, right? And
Yeah.
so I was less interested in the technical side, although still very interested, but kind of came into it from a the performance route. And I couldn't get cast in any of the like local community theater in my hometown. And so for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I would audition. I never got in. And so my parents started taking me to a small town in Texas called Tomball, Texas, where I started doing uh, kind of uh, sort of a community theater there, with like a community of like total hippies. They were like, they weren't like kids who wanted to do theater, although there were kids, there were some young people like my age, but by and large they were like men and women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who had found a community of like sort of weirdos, and I mean that in like the best sense of the word, but like totally strange, eclectic group of adults, who had backgrounds and jobs in like all different kinds of professions, but would come together in the evenings to like smoke cigarettes and rehearse a play at the like middle school auditorium. And I just like, I was just like, great. This group, I auditioned for a play and I got in and I was like, oh my God, this group of people is going to let me in. And I thought it was the most magical thing in the whole world. I
That's
mean,
beautiful.
yeah, my mind just like opened up like a walnut, and suddenly everything in the world was possible to me. And I did play after play after play after play, and my parents, God bless them, would drive me like, it was like an hour each way at least to the rehearsal because it was far outside of town. And I was just, I just fell in love, and ended up like, I ended up also working at the Texas Renaissance Festival with a lot of these same people because they were all like, that was kind of, again, like they were all hippies, and that's sort of like the other thing that they did. They did this community theater, and then they also all worked at the Ren Fair. And I just felt really accepted, and I felt like, you know, and I felt good at it. Like this group of adults made me feel really good at something. And I still remember like some of the moments where I would be playing with them, rehearsing with them, and I would discover something. And then this, like, again, this like group of adults, and I was a kid, I was really young. I was like 14, 15. They would be like, you are really interesting. You have a knack for this. You have, and not just acting, but just like you understand theater, you understand storytelling, was really what I was hearing. And so anyway,
That's
from
awesome.
there, I just never turned back, and I kept getting farther and farther and farther into the theater world, and eventually found my way to writing plays through those experiences.
What was the role that you auditioned for? What was the first part that you got that you were like,
Um,
wow, this is awesome?
the first play I was in out there with the Tomball Community Theater was Amaryllis in The Music Man. So it was a musical.
That's amazing.
And I'm not particularly good at singer. I can like get by. I can kind of like carry a
Yeah,
tune.
same here.
Yeah.
My first I wanted to be in theater in high school as well, and I tried out for a play, and I had to sing, and I didn't get the part. And I
Uh-huh.
think they were like, "You can be a stagehand," and I was like, "Oh," I kind of had an attitude like I'm not a stagehand.
Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't pursue. I didn't get to do theater.
Mm.
Um, but that's so cool that you were embraced by this group of hippies, as you call them, or weirdos,
Yeah.
or oddballs, or beautiful creatures.
Yeah, they were
Um,
totally beautiful creatures, and really just warm and welcoming of me. And I think like, because I also felt like I was a little other, and
yeah,
didn't, and especially like, again, like I grew up in this like kind of wealthy community of of white people. Like it was just this very sort of like white bread America, and I really did not, I felt like a splinter in that community. And so finding your tribe is important anywhere you are. Just find your people, find your
isn't
like-minded people, find the ones who will embrace you, you know.
isn't that just the best? It's literally the best feeling. I had that feeling when I went to film school at the
Mm-hmm.
American Film Academy in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. And I was like, I woke up every morning like looking forward to going to school. High school was such a chore to get up and go every day, for me
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But once you find your group, you're good.
You're good.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, for your writing, what was your first play that you wrote?
I mean, I honestly have no
Or
idea.
when was the first one where you're like, oh wow, I feel like I'm getting the hang of this?
I still haven't written one where I feel like I'm getting the hang of
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course.
I guess when I was in high school, I had a friend named Courtney who wrote a play for like a Texas theater competition. In Texas, like theater is highly competitive. I mean, I think everything in Texas is competitive. So, you know, football is huge there, but then they also have like band competitions and orchestra competitions and theater competitions. And so there was some kind of like Texas theater festival, something or other, that my friend Courtney had written a play for. And then she had won, and it was like a short play, and they had performed it. And I was just like, wow, like that was so impressive to me. And so I wrote a play to submit the following year called like, I don't know, I think it was Alice in Wonderland themed, because I had
Oh, that's awesome.
a stint of like being obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. But needless to say, regardless, whatever the play was, it did not win. It did not even make it to like the next round. It was rudely rejected, but probably it was not very good. But I think, you know, that was maybe the first play. And then I went to college, and I wasn't really writing. I was, again, studying performance, but I had a teacher there who told me, he told me he thought I would make a half-rate actor, but I might make a really good writer. And I guess
What
it's
a
sort of like
jerk.
every time I tell that story, people are like, at the time I was like, oh, thank you. But whenever I tell the story, people are generally just like, fuck that guy. But that said, he helped me get a playwriting grant for undergrads, and so I got to go to New York and have a reading of like a couple of plays that I had written, and that was very important and formative experience for me too, to finally have like an audience of professionals listening to me. And I think it really gave me a jump start into feeling like, oh, maybe this is something I could do for a career.
That's awesome. And what was your first big gig for you where you were like, wow, this is it. I mean, this is the dream, you know,
Um,
professionally, career wise.
I've had a couple of
Yeah.
those, and they aren't always even jobs necessarily. Sometimes they're just milestones, you know, like
Yeah.
I really wanted to go to graduate school and study playwriting, and I thought that that would open a lot of doors for me and also give me some time to meet other people who are close to my age, who are sort of like budding professionals. Um, and I had to apply several years before I finally got in. And that was a really big milestone for me, was that I got in. I went to the Yale School of Drama and studied playwriting for
Wow.
3 years. Um, but yeah, sort of had to bang on that door for a long time until I finally got in. And people, you know, honestly, people told me like, stop trying, you know, they only accept 3 people a year. Why don't you do something else? But I don't know. I just wouldn't give up. And I
Like
probably
Rudy.
even, yes,
Did you?
exactly. I mean, I think like probably to this
Awesome.
day, if I hadn't gotten in, I would, I would still be trying. I just think it's really, really important never to give up, even when your own like beloved friends and family are telling you, oh, well, maybe, you know, if you have a dream, like just go after it. So that was a really big deal. And I guess, you know, the job that really, I think, kickstarted my actual career was writing a film called The Neon Demon, which was my first real professional writing job, which is funny because it's a feature film. And I had never ever thought about writing for film and television ever. You know, I had always been the theater kid and had plans to like, I mean, even when I got the job, I hadn't been seeking that kind of job. I had a theater agent who had sort of slipped my script to the director of this film, who his name is Nick Ruffin, and he just called me and was like, do you want to write a movie with me? It was a very, very strange way to get a first job. And it's really an unusual way to get a first job. But he's an unusual guy. And I think, so, you know, thinking about who he is, that kind of path to like hiring someone seems sort of like normal. Like he self-finances all of his own movies, and he's, you know, he doesn't want to do anything the traditional way. So I got hired in a very untraditional way.
I love that.
Yeah, it was
That's
really, really,
awesome.
it was really amazing. But even then I got that job and I still was like, I'm not moving to Los Angeles. I'm going to do this job. And then afterwards, I'm going to come back, get all my stuff and go to New York and try to be a playwright. But I think that job really changed my life in a lot of ways because I was opened up to it's just like a new facet of myself as a writer, and something that truly, honestly, I didn't feel that I quite fit in the New York theater scene as well as I had hoped I would. I think maybe they weren't responding to my work as well as I wanted, or I wasn't responding to it as much as I wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I came to Hollywood, suddenly I was like, oh, this feels more right. And so I did this entire movie with Nick, and by the end, start to finish, I was like, yeah, this is, again, find your tribe. Like, this is where I should be. These are my people, and this is the environment in which I feel like I will be able to flourish.
That's awesome. That's so great. So, just from a writer's point of view, what is the process of getting a film made? I mean, did you have financing for that, the Neon Dream, or how did that come about?
Yeah, the
The
Neon
Neon
Demon.
Demon, sorry. The
No
Neon
worries.
Demon.
It is sort of like a fever dream in and
Yeah.
of itself. I mean, I don't have a great answer to that question. I think that I'm not really a film maker. I'm a television writer, and I think that I found after the Neon Demon, I found more of a home in television rather than in features. But when I came onto the Neon Demon, you know, Nick had been thinking about and working on this movie for a long time. He had done a script with another writer, this writer named Polly Stenham, who's very, very brilliant writer, which we ended up not using a lot of her draft. But I think, you know, it still was incredibly important and formative, like for our draft. Nick had like some French financing, and he was also partially financing the movie himself, and so there was a lot of that was already like in place. He just needed the script to come together, which is why I came on board. So in terms of actually getting a movie made, I probably won't have any answers to your questions, but
That's okay.
yeah.
Well, what about Monsterland? How did Monsterland become born? How did this idea come about?
Yeah. So Monsterland, I was, you know, so I'd worked on a couple of television shows after I made that movie with Nick, and again had sort of realized, oh, television I think is really exciting to me, and it feels like um that's where like the buzz was. I was like, television is really just like on fire right now, and there's so many different kinds of shows, and there's so much room for so many different kinds of voices. And so I had been thinking for a while, like I would really like to develop a television show myself and see if I could get it off the ground. And I went in for a meeting with Annapurna, who is the studio on Monsterland, and it was just like a general meeting. So just kind of sit down and meet you know, some of their executives, their producers there, and just like get to know each other, so that if they ever did have like some open writing assignments, they call them, then they would call on me and be like, hey, are you interested in working on this? But while I was there, I saw a book on the table called North American Lake Monsters, which Monsterland is based off of. And the blurb on the book was really what drew my eye to it, which is so funny because you never really think about blurbs on books, but it was the blurb on the book. It was like Raymond Carver meets horror or something like that. And I'm a huge horror fan, and I'm a huge Raymond Carver fan. And I was like, well, what's this? And I was meeting with Allie Krug, who is one of our producers on Monsterland, and she was like, oh yeah, we actually, that's a book that we have. Maybe you'd be interested in that. And so I took it and read the first story, and I was just like, oh my God, I have to do this. It's so brilliant. It's written by Nathan Ballingrud, and I highly, highly recommend everyone both watch Monsterland, but also read the book because it's just gorgeous. And yeah, I just thought like this would be a really interesting anthology series of horror stories. The book
It's
is a book of
incredible, by the way. It's so
Thank
good.
you. Thank
So
you.
good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, you're so good in it,
Oh,
Matty.
thanks. Yeah.
I think the book was just the draw. I mean, you read a lot of IP, a lot of open writing assignments. You read and read and read as a Hollywood writer, and generally none of it is, all of it has potential to be adapted, but none of it is just like the greatest thing you've ever read. And North American Lake Monsters was like the greatest thing I'd ever read. I was like, who is this person writing these like really vulnerable, personal. My dog is snoring. Can you hear her? Sorry, she always wants to be on the podcast too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just was like, this is it just spoke to me so much. And one thing led to another, and we started developing it, and then took it out and sold it to a couple of places, and Hulu or got offers to sell it from a couple of places, including Hulu. And Hulu just felt like such a great home for it because I thought that they were programming some really interesting kind of material, and like really different kind of material. And Monsterland is not really like a super traditional horror show, and felt like they would take really good care of the idea of the book and of the show, and they did. I don't know, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that was sort of the development process of the actual series.
So did you pick one of the stories from the story and like write up a pilot for them and say, hey, this is what it would look like?
Yes, I wrote, so they bought the way that it works is they bought the idea. So I went in and we did a pitch with our producers, and sort of an hour-long pitch, and you tell them this is kind of what the show would be. This is
all 8 episodes,
how it would work. Here are some like ideas for different episodes, right?
Okay,
so it doesn't have, it's like kind of loosely, here's how some of the characters would carry through from episode to episode, etc. Here are the themes, and this is why we think it's a really important series. And so you go in and you pitch, and then they buy the idea and will ask for any number of things. For us, they asked for 2 scripts. So they wanted a pilot script, they wanted a pilot outline and script, and then they wanted a second outline and script. And those ended up being our pilot, which is the first episode of Monsterland, and the episode you were in,
cool.
episode 3. And so they look at those scripts and sort of then make a decision. Well, here's what the show would look like. Do we want to go ahead and put millions and millions of dollars behind this, which is green lighting? And fortunately for us, they did. So they write you a big check, and then you go to work figuring out how to actually make it.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So that's amazing. So what was the inspiration by the mermaid episode was part of those stories?
Yeah, so all of the stories are either adapted directly from the book, or they're kind of inspired by the themes of the book or the way that the horror works in the book. So the book is like I said, it's not really traditional horror. So it's not like, a lot of cheap thrills and jump scares and blood and gore and, you know, chasing someone with a chainsaw. Although I love that kind of horror, it's not what necessarily interests me in terms of like creating. And so the book is really like, it's more psychological, it's more metaphorical, honestly, more than anything. It's stories about really broken people who encounter monsters, and then these monsters sort of lift a veil or open the curtains, and suddenly they're able to see them, both themselves and the world, a little differently. And then that leads them down a path of whatever. In your episode in particular, I think, you know, the main character was in denial about something that had happened to her son when he was very young. And when this sort of monstrous presence comes into her life, which is this trumpeter who is a sort of metaphor for her guilt, then she's able to then see what she did, she has been doing all these, what she covered up, and then her guilt eats her alive in a way. So I liked that structure, and that's really what Nathan did in his book. Nathan in his book was so good at putting monsters into these real people's lives and then allowing that to change the way that they lived. So when I say everything is adapted from and inspired by the book, you know, it really, we're in the style of Nathan's stories. We adapted a few of his, but then style of his stories tried to create new types of monsters and new types of stories, with the intent of making sure that everything was as relevant to present day as possible. You know, so some of the new stories that we came up with deal more with, like, you know, present day kind of environmental disasters, you know, or sexual assault, things that we had felt were really in the news and in the zeitgeist, problems that people were wrestling with in contemporary America, but then using the kind of structure of North American lake monsters and the metaphor of monsters to address those more issue-y kind of themes through like in a backdoor way. And we were really fortunate also to have Nathan come into the writer's room with us for the first couple of weeks. And so some of the new stories that were not in his book, he really helped us come up with those ideas and structure those ideas. And so I think we owe a lot of the series to him, not just the ones that were adapted from his stories, but also a lot of the new monsters and a lot of the new stories came in part from his brain as well.
That's awesome. And I really liked how you had a whole episode about bipolar disorder. I thought that was really, really awesome to have that representation.
Yeah, that's
cool.
one of the ones that was adapted from Nathan's stories. It's
Yeah.
it's called the Good Husband in his book. And to be totally frank with you, I was really scared about adapting that story because, you know, I both have like some of my own minor mental health issues, but then I have people in my family who have had bipolar disorder, who've struggled with other kinds of mental illness. And I know how delicate the subject matter is, and felt, I think, like even within myself, sort of a resistance to approach it. But the writers I had 4 writers plus Nathan in the writer's room at the beginning, and they were all insistent that it felt like a story that we really needed to tell, and eventually sort of broke down my own boundaries and my own barriers talking about that kind of material. It felt really scary. It felt really raw and very personal. But I
You
think
don't want to
that's,
create a stigma, or everyone has their own experience with it,
yeah,
right?
everyone
I
has their
mean,
own experience with it, but also I I I I was just scared. I was scared of
yeah.
of approaching it from the wrong way. And even when we broke that story in the writer's room, you know, we were always questioning ourselves. We were always asking, like, well, how do we tell a monster story about bipolar disorder without saying that people with bipolar disorder are monsters, because none of us think that or thought that. But it's you're just walking a very, very fine, delicate line. But that's true with really any of the stories. With the story about sexual assault, that's extremely delicate subject matter. Our first episode deals with single motherhood and issues of abortion. And I say all this and it sounds like it's a really like heavy series. I think it's actually quite fun and entertaining as well.
Yes.
But you want to do it right. You don't want to cause more pain. And I think that, like, creating the series, and I think this certain episodes, called on this inside of me more than others, but creating this series was very scary, and extremely vulnerable, because I was trying to shine a light on certain issues and talk about sort of the various complexities of the human experience, without not necessarily offending, but without causing more pain. And I think that that's like something that everyone who is writing on such a large scale, and almost anyone in the country can watch this show, right? And
Right.
soon many other people through the rest of the world can. And that's a really big responsibility, to make sure that you're putting something into someone's living room that is not going to harm them. It can challenge them, it can move them, it can challenge their own ideas. It can be painful to watch, but you don't want to increase the stigma of coming forward as a sexual assault victim, or increase the stigma of being honest about your struggles with mental illness, or just you don't want to do more harm.
Yeah, exactly. I understand that. I started this podcast because about a year ago, I was diagnosed with ADD,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been called a daydreamer. And I wanted to do this podcast, but I was also I'm very scared and fearful to
Mm-hmm.
be so vulnerable, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that stigma of like, oh, he has ADD, so he has all the things I've heard about, and just like, it's not true. There are certain things that not everyone that has ADD has. You might just have some of the attributes or traits that go along with ADD. So
Yeah.
I think it's very brave that you're able to write those things, and also I think it's kind of healing for people too, in a way, to hear these stories, and they can look at it and be like, "Oh, that's me. I've experienced that." So I
Absolutely.
commend you on doing such a beautiful series. I think it's really masterful. And is there a plan to do any plans to do more of them, or?
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Matt. It
Yeah,
means a lot to me. Right now, there are no plans. There are no plans to not do them, and there's no plans to do them. We're just seeing how people respond to the first season, and I'm also trying to decide if that another season of Monster Stories is inside of me.
yeah,
Because if I'm not ready for it, then you know I don't know. I feel like we have such a wonderful team of incredible artists who would love to come and do another season, which is such a privilege, would be such a privilege to be able to work with them again. But yeah, right now it's just sort of a question mark. But I think it's really cool, Matt, though, that you started this because of your diagnosis. And I think, I I've been thinking a lot about representation. Everyone talks about what representation is, you know, and it's like a word.
Yeah.
We always hear the word, right? Representation, representation. But when you think about it, like I have at different points in my life made decisions that were harmful to myself because I did not understand what I was dealing with or going through, right? So
Yeah.
like for instance, you know, my sexuality, like I'm a gay woman, and I think that like gay women have been highly underrepresented in everything from literature to film and television. Or, you know, I'm also a person who's had some different kinds of trauma in my life. And I think the more that we are able to put those kinds of stories in front of people, not only are people able to be seen, which is extremely important to see themselves, but then they will also be able to find different kinds of pathways to take that are healthier and happier, um, more resolved choices for themselves, because there are examples of those kinds of um, potholes and pitfalls right there in front of them. I think like when we talk about representation, that's the part that I think often gets ignored. It's not just about like, oh, I want to see myself. It's I want to see myself so that I can understand myself, so that I can reflect back on people who look like me and who have gone through things that I have gone through. I think that that's really why storytelling is so absolutely important, and why narrative storytelling, why fiction is so important, because you're able to put yourself in that driver's seat and and go down a path with someone who might look like you, and therefore go down a different path in your own life. It's not exactly always that perfect, but I feel like, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about that, and why representation is so important. And for me right now in this moment, like that's the reason for me.
Well, I think that's beautiful, and I support and believe in you, and everything you've done so far has been incredible, and I think it's awesome that you want more of that, because it needs to happen, and I completely agree with you. So thank you for uh cheering that on, because
Yeah, thank you for cheering
yeah,
it on. You're
yeah,
doing
of
it too.
course.
This is awesome.
Thanks. So dream wise, this is a podcast about dreaming. Um what are some of the things that have helped you get to your dream, just personally, or is there anything that kind of kept you going? What are some things that have helped you along the way with getting your dreams uh, realized?
Therapy.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
same here. Yeah, same here.
Therapy is like a big one. I love my therapist. Shout out to Sarah Kenny here in LA. I feel like, you know, I started going to therapy really full time right about a year before I started developing Monsterland. And I think that there is certainly a correlation between the two. I think that I started to take more risks in my own life, personal life, and professional life after I started going to therapy, because I was able to handle different stresses and situations and triggers and traumas in a healthier way. You know, it's like
That's beautiful.
I always think about therapy that, like, you know, life is sort of like, one metaphor for life is that you're at the bottom of a well, right? Like if you've had trauma, or if you're struggling with anything, you find yourself there at the bottom of a well, right? And it's dark
Yeah,
and it's damp, and like you don't know how to climb out of it, but therapy gives you a rope. And so like therapy, it doesn't mean you're not going to be down at the bottom of the well again. It just means that you're going to have tools to climb out. And so I think that when I started going to therapy, like the whole world started opening up for me because I wasn't afraid to go to certain spaces and places within myself and externally. So I guess therapy is a really big one.
That's awesome. I do therapy, and it's the best tool. Yeah, it teaches you just how to handle things.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So what advice would you have to writers out there that are just starting out? What would you tell them?
Well, find your community first and foremost. I think find a community, and whether that is like, if you're a playwright, if that's a community of a bunch of actors and techies like I started who want to make some stuff with you, then like that's awesome. If that is a community of writers, if that's a writers group that you want to be a part of, then that's awesome. If that's an agent who you find that really believes in you, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just find a community that is going to tell you yes, because you don't want to end up somewhere in a group that is telling you no. It doesn't matter what community that is. It doesn't matter if that was if I had gone to the Yale School of Drama and I got there and they were just suddenly like, all your plays are shit and your voice shouldn't be heard, I should have left. I would have left. Fortunately, they didn't say that, but like, it doesn't matter what community you're in. If they're telling you no, get out. If they're telling you yes, stay there and grow. Work really hard. I don't write every day, but when I do write, I I write deeply. I think deeply about it. I spend a lot of time on what I'm working with. I do multiple drafts and I really dig in deep. So work really hard, and just be kind to everyone around you, because you know I don't necessarily believe in networking, but I do know that the way that you are given opportunities is when people want to have you around. And I think that the best way to foster environments around you that are positive is just to be kind to everyone.
It's
Um,
so true. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is find a community, take risks, work hard, and be kind. And then I swear to God, you'll get it. You'll get whatever your dream is, you'll get it. I think I always feel like if I can do this, anyone can do this. And I really mean that, because I don't think of myself as being like, God's gift to writing necessarily. I think I work hard, and I think I've stayed focused and true to myself. And if you can do that, I mean, you can do anything you want to, anything you want to. I really believe it's possible.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. That's really good advice. I'm going to take your advice. Thank you so much.
Maddie,
Um,
you're doing it though. Everybody loves you. I remember when you came, I'll sing your praises for a minute right now. But like when you came to our set, um, our scripty was like, "Oh my God, Matt, I know that guy." Like some of the crew knew you, and you're so wonderful because
oh, thanks.
you'll go anywhere and work, which I think is like
Yeah,
I think that's a really remarkable thing about you, is that you're willing to fly anywhere to have, to get jobs, take jobs, and have experiences. And I think you've built yourself like a really great um community of like followers and people who really love you, both in the production experience and off screen. I was telling you before we started, I was watching with my
that's
friends and they
awesome.
were like, "Oh man, I know that guy. We love that guy. We've seen him on
That's
this, that, and
awesome.
the other." So
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that.
yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Well, I love being part of the show. It was an incredible experience. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, one last question. I want to ask you about Succession real quick.
Okay.
Um, what was your experience working on that show? Because it's incredible as well.
It is. It's such a great show. I mean, my time on Succession was brief. I only worked on the second season, and I wrote one episode for the second season, and I was not
Dundee,
in
right?
Dundee. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was not in production on that episode because Monsterland ended up being greenlit, and they were happening at the same time, and so I
Oh,
had to
gotcha.
go and run the writers' room on Monsterland. But I got to spend about 3.5 months in London working with Jesse Armstrong, who runs that show, and all of the absolutely brilliant writers who had been a part of the show, most of them since the first season. And they're just awesome. They're like the X-Men. They're just like, they're totally impenetrable, brilliant, little, wonderful writer, comedic geniuses. I mean, they're just, and also just the fucking nicest people on the planet. It was such a privilege to be a part of that room, and also, like, experience the way that a writer's room in the UK works a little bit differently than in the US. Jesse led really short days, really short days. I
Oh,
was used to being in these, like, US writers' rooms where you would just hear horror stories about how you had to stay until midnight or 1 a.m. working on a story or blah, blah, blah. And Jesse, I think we would go in for like 4 hours a day, and the entire first hour of the day would always just be kind of like chit chat about what we did the night before, what we were watching and stuff. And so and then there was like half an hour in the middle where we would have tea. And so probably we only worked about 2.5 hours every single day and still got a lot done. And that was really inspiring to me, because I thought, what a healthy environment, what a healthy way
yeah.
to run a room, so that you were also able to have a personal life, or you were able to work on other projects, which I
Takes the
did.
pressure valve off. Takes the
Yeah,
pressure.
it takes the pressure valve off, and it was just like a really easy, friendly, happy space to get to inhabit for 3 months with those guys. So it was a lot of fun, and that show is just so it's just well built from the beginning. The
Yeah.
characters are just so well drawn, and so coming into it, it was just such a pleasure. It was a total delight.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Where can people find you on online, or where can they
Online,
find you?
I'm on Instagram.
Nice.
Mary Laws, Mary Christina Laws, I think is my handle. So I'm online there. Come check me out. But then also, please watch Monsterland, which
Yeah,
is
watch Monster.
now streaming on Hulu. It's 8
Yeah,
episodes of fun.
that's awesome. Well, Mary, I wish you so much more success, and I hope all your new dreams come true. I support you. You're wonderful, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Matty. You too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. This was
Cool.
really fun. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Yeah.
asking me.
Of course. Well, take care and tell Heather I said bye.
I will.
All
Thanks
right.
for everything, Matty.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon. Stay in touch,
All right.
okay?
I will. All right.
Okay.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, that was awesome. Mary Laws, thank you so much. You're so talented, amazing, super cool. So great to interview you. I hope to work with you again and again, because you're the best. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, my daydreamers. Thanks for coming by. Check us out on Apple Podcasts or on the YouTubes. Like and subscribe and comment. If you could please do that, I'd really appreciate it. I guess it helps with the algorithm of getting people to listen. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you all out there, I hope all your dreams come true. Make sure to follow them, listen to your heart, and stay cool, stay blessed, and stay awesome. Thank you for listening, and I bid you adieu. Goodbye. Daydreaming.